get into that, just a little bit about who I am and I guess why I'm speaking on structured problem solving today. So like Jeff said, my name is Patrick Adams, and I do lean or continuous improvement consulting, coaching here in the West Michigan area. And I've been doing it within my own company for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I did spend 8 years in the Marine Corps, and then after the Marine Corps, I landed a job at a plastics plant in Holland. Anybody familiar with Graham Packaging? Some of you maybe do work with them, a few of you. So I landed a job as a production supervisor at Graham Packaging, and at that time I had zero experience in the civilian world, except for McDonald's, which is a little bit different, but zero experience working in manufacturing, and zero experience leading people in the civilian world. I knew how to lead Marines, but not so much out in the civilian world. And so it was an eye-opening experience for me. But while I was there, I fell in love with the idea of taking materials and making a final product that someone really, really liked and enjoyed. And the whole idea of just manufacturing, I really enjoyed it. So I stuck with manufacturing for quite a while, and ended up working with a couple different companies in automotive, in aerospace, and also ended up working as a lean leader at Parker Hannifin. Is anybody familiar with Parker Hannifin? So Parker is a motion controls technology company. They also have an amazing lean or continuous improvement culture there, a great training system. And so I was able to learn quite a bit while I was at Parker Hannifin. And then since then, I've worked at various companies, Amway being one of them, both as a lean leader as well as a plant manager, and learned quite a bit while I was there too. But like I said, about 3 years ago, I stepped out on my own, and we started doing some coaching and consulting through the company that I work with and that I started, and we've really enjoyed it. Had a good time. So that's a little bit about my background. Is it going to work? I got to turn it on. So the Marshmallow Challenge. So I saw a couple of hands go up as far as who's knows about the Marshmallow Challenge or who's done it before. But let me give you just a little bit of history about the Marshmallow Challenge and why it fits perfectly with what we're going to be talking about today, which is structured problem solving. So the Marshmallow Challenge was actually started in 2006, or it was created and rolled out in 2006 by Peter Skillman, who took this idea of the Marshmallow Challenge and deployed it to industry, all different industries, all different age groups, leaders, kids, college students, anybody and their brother. He was rolling it out all over the world. And the cool thing about what Peter Skillman did with the Marshmallow Challenge is that he collected a ton of data based on the results of the Marshmallow Challenge. And if you don't know about the Marshmallow Challenge, if you Google Marshmallow Challenge and go out and check it out, the data that's out there it's pretty cool to see what has come out of what Peter Skillman did with the Marshmallow Challenge. So the nice thing is that you guys get to experience that today, a few of you. So what the Marshmallow Challenge is basically the challenge is pretty simple. You have to build the tallest freestanding structure. Okay, so we have these tables. Freestanding means it can't be taped to the ceiling, it can't be taped to the sides of the table, it can be taped to the top of the table, but not the sides, not the ceiling. You can't hold onto it. It has to be freestanding. You can't use a chair or anything like that, right? And you get the materials that are listed up here. So you get 20 sticks of spaghetti, 1 yard of tape, 1 yard of string. You can cut. We'll talk about the rules here in a second. The scissors you can't use in the structure, but they are here for the materials. And then you have 1 marshmallow. Okay, and the marshmallow has to be on top. Now the measurement actually comes. I have a tape measure for the winning team. Like I said, they get a prize. There's a lucrative prize. The measurement goes from the tabletop to the top of the marshmallow. Okay, so that's the way that it works. Now you can only use the material that's given to you in your kit. You can't use anything extra. You can use as little or as much of the kit as you want. So you don't have to use everything, but you can use as much of it as you want. It has to be freestanding. The entire marshmallow has to be on top. That's important. No biting, taking a bite out of it or anything like that. I know what you guys were thinking. No, it's got to be the whole marshmallow on top. As much or as little of the kit as you want. You can cut the spaghetti, break the spaghetti. You can cut the tape or the string as much as you want. and then you cannot hold the structure up at the end. So the marshmallow challenge normally takes 18 minutes. Based on time, we're going to do 10 minutes, just to make sure that we can fit everything into all the stuff that we want to do today. But I want you guys to experience the marshmallow challenge because it's such a great activity for problem solving. It teaches some really, really great lessons for teams when they're starting to learn how to problem solve. So with that, any questions from anybody on the marshmallow challenge before we actually experience it? So oh yeah.
Do we need to designate a project manager or?
We're going to leave it up to the teams to do that.
Okay.
Now, so the other thing too is for those of you that are not participating, you guys have a job too. I want you to observe, choose one, or maybe even watch a few of the different groups, and observe and look for, what are the things that you're seeing on that team as far as how well they're working together or whether they're going to accomplish their goal or not. Of building the tallest freestanding structure, and just listen in to some of the conversations that are happening and the dynamics that happen. And I think it'll be pretty interesting to hear from some of you observers on what you see during the exercise, okay? Now, the team that wins is not only gets a lucrative prize for each of the winners, but they also get bragging rights. So next event, hopefully there's a trophy of some sort or a picture that we can show at the next event. So there's bragging rights for, I would say, at least 2 months, 3 months.
We'll get them a giant s'more.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, something to that effect. Okay, so go ahead and head to your tables. If you have volunteered to do the marshmallow challenge, go ahead and head to your table.
Yeah.
26 and 3/4.
Wow.
All right, so let's take a seat. All right, so winning team. Let's ask the winning team first. What made your team successful, do you think, in building your structure?
Taking the risk that it would hold up.
So you took some risk?
Yeah.
Okay.
We planned. I thought we did some planning.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
we
you.
definitely did some planning. See, that's how you know I was good. I told you, no worries.
So you put some plans together before you started, and then you went into it. And did you stick to your plan, or did the plan change?
We stuck to the plan. We adjusted the plan. We were going to do 4 high, but then we adjusted for cross braces when we decided as a group that we thought we might need to worry about the torsion. from
Gotcha.
the weight of the marshmallow.
Okay.
There was a lot of
Structural engineer, right?
There was a lot of
Mechanical engineer. Sorry.
There was a lot of collaboration.
So a lot of collaboration, right? That's a good word. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But a lot of collaboration. What about the other teams? What did you guys feel helped you to be successful? I know this one didn't quite make the time. Maybe if you had 18 minutes, you're supposed to have 18 minutes, so maybe you would have been good, right? But between these two teams, what do you think are the things that helped you be successful as a team? What are the working together? So you work together. Good. Anything else?
Recognizing that there's a problem and working together to fix it. We didn't get our momentum, but
Yeah.
we all recognized right away that we need those cross braces in the middle.
So you mentioned right away. A lot of times when we're faced with problems or challenges, we have to collaborate very quickly, usually in teams, right? A lot of times it's not us all by ourselves, but usually problems take a team to come together and really understand what's going on. And we're going to talk a lot about team collaboration today and the importance of having the right team in place in order to solve a problem as quickly as possible and really drive to root cause and make sure that we have the right cause that we're working on, okay? So some interesting information I'll show you here in just a second, but anything that you would do differently than from what you did today, those of you that were on the teams?
Tape the marshmallow to the top so it wouldn't slide down.
Oh, that's right. You guys, yours slid down, so maybe put a little bit of tape. Okay, good. What else would you do differently? What about as a team? Anything that you would do differently as a team?
We didn't actually ask each other who had what expertise.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm.
We just kind of went at it and kind of worked together. I like that we all kind of, on some level, it felt like we did go down to the least level of consensus instead of, I didn't feel like we took a risk, honestly, from my perspective. It was like, hey, mathematically, we could have gone higher, but we kind of said, hey, where is the level of risk that the group is comfortable with, and go back down to them
Okay, good.
based on the time constraint.
Good. What about observers? What did you guys see, those of you that were kind of walking around and watching the different teams interact with each other? Any interesting insight that you guys can offer on what you saw?
Initially, I just saw some forming and storming right off the bat.
Okay.
People grabbing things and talking over each other a little bit. But once they started getting to a cadence, it became a storm, and then they started to work together a little bit more collaboratively in terms of their design.
Very nice. That's a
Helping
good
each other,
observation.
like think about the cross support,
Yep.
taping things, tying them. So it's good.
People kind of fell into their
I think
roles
so.
within the
That's
team.
what I saw.
Good. Good. Anybody else?
Seemed like
Good.
they started with a goal and then solved the problems as they arose. Started tipping too far this way, so they adjusted and were flexible as far as.
That's a great observation. We're gonna hit on that here in just a second. So good. So we already talked about that, but this is the data that I talked about. I want you guys to go out and look at some of this data, but this is some of the data from all of the different individuals that have been tracked through the Marshmallow Challenge. Out of all of the different people groups and ages and demographics, who do you think consistently performs poorly? Older? Okay.
Leaders.
Leaders, maybe? Put all leaders on a team, possibly?
Groups with a lot of overlapping skill sets.
Okay. So similar skill
Like
sets on the same
A
team?
group of engineers
Right.
all together.
Okay.
A group of leaders all together.
Okay. I could see that. The answer is actually recent business school graduates. And this is true. This is based on data, right? We can trust it. This is data. Recent business school graduates tend to perform the worst overall out of all the different groups that are studied through the Marshmallow Challenge. And we're going to talk about why here in just a second. But who do you think performs consistently well? Who'd you say? Project managers. Yeah, of course. Project managers.
Engineers.
Structural engineers.
Maybe.
Anybody else? Children. You're actually right. Recent kindergarten graduates. Yeah. Then now engineers do perform. We're going to look at a little bit more data here in a second. Engineers perform very well, but consistently over all the data sets, kids actually perform the best over adults. So this is really interesting. Why do you think that would be? Why would kids perform better than adults?
They have no constraint formed already.
Mm.
Just,
It's definitely a part of it, right? I mean, we as adults, we're kind of, when we get out into the workforce, right? It's kind of like you can work within this box, but that's it. Like don't go out here. You can't fail because you won't get promoted then. You can't try this because you won't. So just stay in here, right? And so over time, a lot of us as adults start to get like this kind of we don't want to try things that are out of the box. We just want to do what we're supposed to do, and right. So that's similarly. Did you have something?
I wanted to know if you recall what's the highest marshmallow you've ever measured.
Let me show you this next slide here in a second, and I believe it's somewhere near the top of the, which I'll show you here in just a second. So, the typical progress for graduating business school students, what are the business school students taught to do? They're taught to make a plan, right? So what happens is with business school students is they tend to jockey for power. They have a lot of storming that's happening within their team. Like, you know, all these A-type business school graduates are jockeying who's gonna lead the group, right? Who's gonna be the one breaking sticks and things like that. And then they tend to make this huge elaborate plan. They spend 15 minutes making this big plan, and then the last couple minutes they're actually building, and then right at the end of 18 minutes they put their marshmallow on top, and then what happens? It falls over, right? Because what happened? There was a hidden assumption, right? They assumed that marshmallows are light and fluffy, right? Wouldn't you think marshmallows would be light and fluffy? So that's what they assumed, right? So because they assumed that, at the end when they put the marshmallow on top, the tower fell over, right? The difference with kids is that they prototype. They don't assume anything, and they definitely don't jockey for power. These kids don't really care who's in charge. They just all jump in and start working, right? Which I saw a couple groups that actually did that today. But they don't jockey for power. They jump right in and just fall into wherever they need to fall into. They throw out ideas. Everybody listens to the ideas, and they do prototype. They try things. They start with the marshmallow on top. They build a little structure, and they go, okay, what worked? Well, squares don't work, but triangles do work. Okay, let's use triangles. Okay, now they take the marshmallow off. They do something else. Then they put the marshmallow back on. Okay, did that work? Right? And they continue to prototype what we call PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act cycles, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. They do these iterative cycles as they build this tower, and at the end, they end up with a pretty nice sized tower, which is similar to the observation that you made, right? Where you saw, okay, the tower's leaning a little bit this way, so let's adjust here. Okay, now it's doing this, let's adjust here, right, with the marshmallow on top. Different than what a lot of people do is they assume it's light and fluffy, and they wait till the end, and that's what happens, right? So some really interesting data here. Average is 20 inches over all the data sets. You can see kindergarten students are up around 28 to 29 inches. Architects and engineers are the highest when they work together, which is good. I'm glad to hear that architects and engineers can actually build a strong tower, right? This is a really interesting concept that we're going to talk about. When CEOs work together, they're at just over the average at 22, 23 inches. And then when you add an executive admin to the group, they actually go up to over 31 inches. Why do you think that would be?
Because they know how to work.
Ooh. Any other ideas? Why do you think when you add an executive admin to the group that they would do better?
Because they're organized.
So they have a different skill set than what a CEO might have, right? And a good CEO is going to choose an executive admin that complements his or her weaknesses or areas that they're not so strong in, right? In order to maximize the opportunity or the work that they're able to do, right? So that's really what it is the CEOs and the executive admins have their own strengths, right? They're diversified in their strengths. So when you bring them together, those strengths actually create a really good collaborative team. So that's one of the concepts that we're going to talk about as we get into more of the structured problem solving. And so I think the tallest was up around 32, 33 inches since we've been doing it. But we've had some consistently around that level. So, yeah. But that's also 18 minutes. We were a little short here. So maybe with a little bit more time. Okay. So simple activity, deep lessons. You guys mentioned collaboration, right? When we work on problems, which I'm guessing all of you deal with problems in project management. No problems? When we work on problems, we want to have collaboration. good collaboration. We have to be able to collaborate very quickly. The longer that we jockey for power, the longer that we try to figure out who's going to be in what role and who do we actually need in order to move ahead, or maybe I'll just take this one by myself and try to solve it all by myself. That's going to cause us to spend a lot more time than what we need to when we're problem solving. The other thing is the diversified skills, right? We want to have our skill set on our team, and we always talk about problem solving needs to be team based. It really shouldn't be by yourself. Every problem is going to overlap into different areas, and you really want to have representatives from each of those areas to be able to create that collaborative and diversified team with lots of different strengths. Okay. So those are two very important, deep lessons that come out of this activity. The last one is prototyping. Consistent, early PDCA cycles so we can drive out assumptions, right? If we think that something is light and fluffy, if we think that the data says this and we don't really know for sure, we really need to spend the time doing some PDCA cycles or going out and actually checking to make sure that that is reality. Drive out the assumption as early as possible. The more time that we spend working on something that maybe isn't true or using data that maybe isn't accurate, the more time that it's going to take us to solve the problem. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. All right. So now let's get into really what is structured problem solving. So in order to do that, we have to level set on what is a problem, right? So the way that we define a problem is it's really the gap between where we are today and where we want to be, right? And you can think about that with really any kind of problem. If today I'm at this level, if I have 20 defects an hour and I really want to be at 10 defects an hour, the gap is the 10, right? I need to reduce it by 10. So that's the problem that I'm going after. Does that make sense? And you can really define any problem that way. But it's important that as a team, that we begin by really understanding what the problem is and defining it correctly in the beginning, okay? So, and you'll see when I show you the steps behind the structured problem solving that we use, the first thing that we do is we define the problem accurately. We make sure that everyone on the team understands exactly what problem that we're going after. So that's the first one. The other thing that's important for us to understand is that we need to have structured problem solving in place. Structured problem solving meaning when there's a problem, when there's a challenge that we're faced with, the team should be aligned with how do we respond to this problem, okay? If everybody's doing something completely different, if some of you are familiar with different problem solving methodologies, but if someone's using 8D and another person's using A3 and someone else is just kind of trial and error on stuff that they've experienced in the past, it's going to be hard as a team to really speak the same language, and again, it's going to be very time consuming. You're going to spend a lot more time spinning your wheels, heading down rabbit holes that maybe aren't going to drive you towards the solution. So you need to be speaking the same language, and you need to have a structured problem-solving process in place that everyone's trained on, that everyone understands and believes in and follows, okay? So when you don't, you have time-consuming issues, things drag out. Maybe you're only dealing with the symptom rather than the root cause. So maybe you're able to solve the problem temporarily, but then next week or next month, the problem pops back up again, right? You threw a Band-Aid on it, now the Band-Aids are popping off, and now you got too many of them to deal with. Probably some of you are dealing with that right now. So for example, with symptoms, I had a situation where I was having headaches. I was waking up every morning with a really, really bad headache, okay? And what do we do when we have headaches? What do most of us do when we have headaches? Take some ibuprofen, yeah. So that's what I did. I popped some Motrin, and the headache went away, right? The next morning I woke up, I had the same headache. I'm like, what's going on here? Pop some Motrin, right? I did this. This went on for a little while, and finally I stopped myself, and I'm like, okay, stop covering up a symptom. Let's drive down to the root cause here and figure out why am I having these headaches? Because I wasn't having them as of 2 months ago. Now all of a sudden I'm having these headaches, right? This is really weird. So I had to ask myself, why is my head hurting when I wake up in the morning? And the answer to my question was, well, my neck hurts. So maybe my neck is causing my head to hurt, right? And then I had to ask myself, why is my neck hurting? And then I'm like, well, my back hurts. So maybe my back is causing my neck to hurt, which is giving me a headache, right? And then I asked myself, well, why is my back hurting? And what I realized was that the mattress that we had, I was in the military for 8 years, we moved 9 times, and this was right after we got out, and that mattress had been like folded and twisted and into different moving trucks and everything, and there were actually a couple springs that had popped out, and when I took the sheet off, the bed was all, so I'm like, okay, well this is exactly what needs to be fixed, right? Now you could probably go even deeper than that and wonder why I wasn't doing some kind of a preventative maintenance on that and checking it earlier. But anyways, when I took the mattress out and I put a new mattress in, guess what happened? Headaches went away. I didn't have to take aspirin anymore, right? Because I got to the root cause. And that's really key when we talk about problem solving, is really driving to root cause. And when we have a good structured problem solving system in place, we're able to save time. We have a goal, an end goal in mind. We're able to get to the root cause. And that's important. The more symptoms that we work on, the more of those band-aids that are going to keep popping off, and those problems are just going to keep piling up. So we have to take the time to stop, drive to root cause, and get rid of that problem so we don't have to deal with it anymore. All right? We're going to talk about how to do that. A good structured problem-solving process is really based on the scientific method. Who remembers this from elementary, middle school, right? The scientific method. So the way that this works, let's just imagine that I walk into my house and I have a light bulb that's burnt out. Okay? So the first thing that I do is I make an observation, right? I look, oh, the light bulb's burnt out, right? That's my first step. The next thing is that my question, right? Why is the light bulb burnt out? Then I make a hypothesis. Well, my hypothesis is that actually I already said what it was, the light is burnt out, right? The observation really was the light isn't on. So my hypothesis is that maybe the bulb itself is burnt out, right? So I have to test that hypothesis. So I change the light bulb out and I put a new bulb in and I turn on the switch. And either, so my prediction was that if I change it out, that it'll work, right? I'm testing it. My conclusion is either the light did work and I was able to fix it, right? And so then I have to communicate that out to my wife and let her know that I was able to fix the light. She's proud of me. Or the opposite happens and the light still doesn't work, and now I have to go back to my hypothesis, right? And I have to try something else. Maybe something's wrong with the wiring. Maybe the switch is broke. Maybe the ballast is broken. There could be a lot of other predictions that I could make on what's causing that problem, right? So a good structured problem-solving process, or PDCA, is really what we want to go after as we're starting to develop structured problem solving. So I have another activity to help you guys understand what PDCA is, and I am going to need each group around your table to stand up and push in your chairs and just circle around the tables. And I'm going to come around and give you a ball that you're going to use for this quick activity. Here you go. Here you go. All right. The way that this works is you have to try to work the ball around the table as quickly as you can. Okay, so I need someone in the circle to have a clock on your phone. So someone in the circle, pick who your timekeeper is. Go ahead and go to your stopwatch. What you're going to do is the person who has the ball in their hand is going to say their name. You start the clock. I'm going to say my name. My name is Patrick. Okay? Then I'm going to toss the ball or hand the ball to somebody in the circle, and then they're going to take the ball, and that person's going to say, his name is Patrick, my name is Doug. Okay? Now you don't have to say everyone's name before you. I know that's what you guys are thinking. You only have to say the one person before you and your own name. Okay? So that's one of the rules. You have to say the person name before you and your own name. The ball can't hit the ground, and everybody has to be involved. Everybody has to touch the ball. Okay? So on your mark, get set. Go. Start your clock. Once you hit the last person, stop the clock. All right. Now, what I want you to do first is I want you to take a moment because I'm going to challenge you. I want you to cut your time in half. Okay? So your challenge is to cut your time in half. I want you to, before you start, I want you to talk to each other and make a plan about how you're going to do that. So go ahead and take a minute and talk to each other. Okay, you made a plan. You did the plan, right? If you stayed within the rules, you did the plan. Now we have to check. Now, if we didn't calculate our time ahead of time, if we just said, I feel like it was about this, I think it's faster, I think it is, I feel like it is, right? Those are assumptions. We have to drive that out, right? So we have to have data in order to back our decisions, right? So when we get to the check, so we did the plan, we did the do, now we're at the check, right? We gotta have data, we have to have data. Gotta isn't proper English, sorry. I get excited and then I just, so we had this initial time, right? Now, team number 1, were you able to cut your time in half? Yeah. Team number 2, were you able to cut your time in half?
Yes.
Team number 3?
Yes.
Team number 4?
Yes.
Okay, so every team met their goal. So now when we get to the action, if we have standard work in place, which hopefully you have standard work in place, if you don't, you need to put standards in place so that people are being trained to the same standards, right? Because if you don't, these times are going to be all over the place. Just like it was with each one of these teams did it differently the first time, right? So you get different times. So the first thing we need to do is, our action is get standard work in place and make sure that the standard work is going to get us this time, right? So everybody is doing it the same way. Does that make sense? Because if not, if third shift comes in or someone else comes in, they're going to do it this way, the old way, and they're going to get this time. We've improved that. We've met our goal. We need to make sure that the team understands that, knows it, that they're trained to it, and that they're following the new process, right? So that's our action. Now, if we didn't cut it in half, then the action is a little bit different. The action is, let's go back to the plan and let's figure out what did we learn when we tried, when we experimented, just like you guys started doing back there, right? What did we learn and what can we do differently this next time to get even better, right? So I would give you another PDCA cycle to get even shorter on your time, but I want to make sure we stick to the clock here. So let's go ahead and take a seat. I have seen teams get it under 1 second, just so you know. Under 1 second. All right, now here's the balance, right? When we talked about recent business school graduates and we said that they spend all this time planning, the issue with a lot of the companies that we work in, all of us, are that we spend 0 time planning, right? We just jump right to the do. This is what I experienced before. This is what we need to do to respond to this problem. That's not the right approach either. We have to find a balance because there has to be a good plan in place before we actually go do, right? And I'm going to show you the steps that we follow when we go through our planning process, and we're going to do another activity here in a second to help nail that down. But the typical way that a lot of companies work is they have 0 plan. They get into the do, they spend a lot of time checking to see how things are going, and like, oh crap, that data isn't good, oh, we forgot to do this, let's go back and do that. And then the action is, again, much longer, right? What we want to have is we want to have slow throw planning, good do, good check, and good act, and then move on to the next problem. Hoping that making sure that we've driven to root cause, right? So this is the 10-step problem solving method that we teach. And each step, obviously you can see each of the steps falls within one of the different categories of PDCA. I mentioned about describing the problem, making sure that we understand our needs and requirements. I think you could Google, there's a form that we use called 6W2H. It's like, what, where, when, why, how, all of that stuff, but it helps you to define your problem and collect all of your needs and requirements. You guys heard me talk about the necessity to have a good team in place. We also teach that as well. You have to have a good team in place, a good diversified team that's going to help you drive to root cause very quickly. The right team members. One of the things we also always tell people is try to find somebody that has nothing to do with this particular problem, has no idea, an outsider that can come in and provide another set of eyes that maybe it hasn't been wearing blinders for the last 3-4 months, right? That can come in and go, why do you guys do it this way? Well, I don't know, that's just the way we've always done it. Well, why do we do it that way? Could we do it a different way, right? So we always tell people to maybe add someone else to their team. Identify potential causes. We use a fishbone in order to do that, and that's what I have right over here. So you guys may have heard the term Ishikawa, fishbone, cause and effect diagram. There's a lot of different terms for this. Another one that you can go out and Google, and you can find a ton of these examples online. But this is a really great way for you to collectively as a team determine all of the potential causes that are causing this problem to occur, okay? So what we do is we always throw it up here. I love Post-it notes, so I use Post-it notes for everything. We usually have different categories depending on the industry. Manufacturing likes to use 6 M's. When we're in the transactional space, we use a couple different ones. I threw a ton of other topics up here. You don't have to be tied into a certain topic. Whatever topic makes the most sense for you to help drive this kind of structured brainstorming activity, throw it up there. If you guys don't talk in terms of policies, then use procedures or process, right? Do something, use a language that actually works for your team. Equipment, if you don't use equipment, maybe use computers or systems, material, whatever works for you, people management. Within an Ishikawa or a cause and effect, what we put over here is our problem statement. So we've already identified what the problem is, right? So we put our problem statement up here. So for you guys, I chose a problem that I think all of us deal with or have dealt with at some point, and it's very important to me that we solve this, so I ask every group to help me with this one, and it's bad, it's bad coffee. Come on, anybody else with me on this? All right, so what I want you to do, you guys have Post-it notes on your table, based on these topics, these categories, for people, how could people be contributing to this problem? If I walk into a coffee shop and I order a cup of coffee and it just tastes terrible, how could people be contributing to this particular problem? I want you to write one reason per Post-it note, and just go ahead and write that down in your Post-it note. How could people, the barista, the person that made the coffee beans or that grew the coffee, I mean, all of the people that are involved, management, how could they be contributing to bad coffee? Go ahead and write at least one on a Post-it note. One reason. What's that?
Per person or table?
Per person. Grab some Post-it notes, grab a marker. If there's not enough markers, you can work together with whoever's next to you. Just come up with at least 1 or 2 under people. Same thing with procedures. Okay, so now procedures. What could be one procedure, how they make the coffee, right? Or the process of making the coffee, the process of growing the beans, the process of grinding, the process of cleaning the coffee maker. I mean, how could any of that contribute to us having bad coffee? So I want you to write one reason per Post-it note, okay? Down here is equipment, the actual coffee maker itself, the equipment used to grind the beans, anything at all, the environment that the beans are grown in. If there's anything coming to mind that could cause bad coffee, write it right down on a Post-it note. Okay? Now material, so the actual beans themselves, the water that we're using. All right, take a moment to write those up. All right, now here's what I want you to do. A couple people from the table, go ahead and come up here and throw those up here on the category where they go. So come on up and throw them up here. All right, now what do you guys see here? You guys see a ton of Post-its. How long did it take for us to throw those up there? Honestly, a couple minutes, right? 2 minutes. And look at how many ideas we have for causes of bad coffee. Now, do you think you could do that with a problem that you're dealing with within your company or within the project that you're working on? Could you grab 2 minutes of your team's time and have them throw up all of these potential ideas of why you're having a specific problem? And it would take 2 minutes, right? It doesn't take that much time to do. Now, what I want you to realize here is we probably have some duplicates up here, right? So there's 2 things that I would do in order to now take from 20 or 30 different potential causes down to the 1 or 2 that I'm going to work on, right? So the first thing that I would do is I would cluster. When I cluster these, because I have duplicates up here, because nobody was talking, people were just writing, right? When I cluster, what's going to happen? Am I going to see one big cause or a couple of really big causes that everybody on the team, if I pick my team correctly, everybody that's engaged in this process, it's probably a pretty good bet that that big cluster is one of the best causes that we should probably go after. I mean, there's no scientific method to this, except that it's majority vote, right? So the other way that we do this is it's called N/3, and I basically take the number of people on the team. Some people take the number of Post-its. I take the number of people on the team, divide by 3, and then that's the number of votes that I give to each person. And then I have them come up here with a marker, and they put a dot on the one that they think is the greatest potential cause of this issue. And those are the 1 or 2 areas that we go after first. Does that make sense? And then do you guys remember how I started asking why about my neck situation? By asking why 5 times or more, sometimes, or less, that's going to drive me down to the root cause. So I might have something up here like person doesn't know measurements, and I would say, why don't they know measurements? Well, maybe they weren't given the tools. Okay, well, why weren't they given the tools? Well, maybe there isn't a good training program for how to use the tools. Well, why isn't there a good training program? Okay, now we're at the kind of the root cause. If we developed a training program, that would solve this issue, right? So we want to ask why and get as deep as we can to the root cause and solve that. If we just trained the person on measurements, but they didn't have the right tools, this would just keep happening over and over again, right? So we have to get deeper into the root cause. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's all part of the planning phase. Once we're done with the planning phase, things happen really quickly. Once we put a good plan together and we know which root cause we're going after and we develop some solutions for that, now all we're doing is we're doing PDCA cycles. We're trying it, we're experimenting, and then we're checking, did it get better? Did we reduce or eliminate the problem? Did it come back? Are we dealing with the root cause? Are we dealing with the symptom? We're experimenting to see if we can reduce or eliminate the problem. And then the plan is, if we can't, we go back to the plan. We got plenty of other ideas we can go after up here, right? If that particular cause didn't reduce or eliminate the problem. It's not that we did anything wrong. It's just that we need to go back to the drawing board, right? We need to choose a different potential cause and go after that one. And we continue to do these PDCA cycles until we drive to root cause. Do, check, and then act on the results. I just want to throw this up here. We do have a very extensive, I only had 1 hour, so I wasn't able to cover all 10 of these in detail. But we do have an extensive structured problem solving program on our website that's available if you're interested to go any deeper on this particular subject. But outside of that, that's really structured problem solving in a nutshell. PDCA is really the best approach that we have found. And then obviously, as I said, we have 10 different steps that fall under PDCA. And a lot of the other 8D, A3, all of these other problem-solving methodologies, they really align with PDCA. So if you understand the simple acronym and you can follow PDCA, you're going to be able to sit in on an 8D or an A3 or any other type of problem-solving methodology. So with that, any questions or? Anything for me?